When it comes to building any kind of business, if we're starting small, if we are scaling one that's already in existence, there is a certain roadmap that we follow. And because I've done this thousands of times with my clients and helping them to grow and scale, it's kind of rinse and repeat. And so with the formula, there's things we just got to talk about. And we're going to cover all of that in this video. So, jumping right into it, one of the questions that comes up has to do with structure of the business. So, you might already have a certain type of structure like an LLC. We're going to talk about a few of them, and maybe you're just trying to make the decision. So, let me go through them. The first is a sole proprietorship. This is if it's just you doing businessy stuff. So, what I mean by this is that you are not setting up or registering an actual business with the state that you live in, but you are doing business under a certain business name. So, for example, we have Blue Light Plumbing. So, if it's John Doe doing business as Blue Light Plumbing, your sole proprietorship. Now, what we want to do is not have you personally liable, but that's what happens if you don't actually register a company, and I'll tell you why. So, that's what it looks like. We don't want to do that typically. So, the next thing that we usually talk about are limited liability companies. So, a limited liability company is we have, and what did I say? I already forgot. Blue Light Plumbing LLC, which creates a liability shield around you. So now you, as a business owner, as someone doing what you're doing, if something happens, the other person is going to sue the LLC. In the first scenario with the sole proprietorship, they get to sue you personally. So that means they get to come after your personal assets and car and bank accounts. And if you have an LLC and you use that LLC on your contracts, then they can only sue the LLC. And the great news is that regardless of where you register the company, you're getting the same kinds of protections. And there are some states that are better to register in, but I'll just keep this simple for you. Just register your LLC where you live. This is something that you probably could even do on your own as far as finding the paperwork, filling it out, but there's plenty of people and services that can help you with this, including me. I do it all the time. So set up your LLC. The other question that people have in regards to these types of structures are corporations. Should I set up an S corporation or a C corporation? The benefit, again, you have the liability shield because you have a real company protecting you personally. Well, that's there. The second kind of layer of benefit has to do with taxes. Now, I'm not an accountant. Please talk to your accountant. But typically, when you have a company that is generating a good amount of revenue, and let's say it's like $250,000 gross, at that point, you probably want to talk to your accountant about possibly setting up an S corporation, or you can even, let's say if you have an LLC, you can convert the LLC to an S corp. And then it goes on from there. Okay. So, really great questions to kind of keep in mind for when you do speak with your accountant. So, structurally, we now have the business. This is a really important step. And if you are interested in a limited liability company, I go into more deep dives talking about the operating agreement that you should get, formalities for the company, having meetings, and all the things. I'm not going to go into that in this video. I just want to keep it specific to how we're building the company. So we have the business structure. The next thing we're going to talk about has to do with your intellectual property. Your intellectual property are going to be things like your business name. So if we have Blue Light Plumbing, well, that's your trademark. As you build the business and you get goodwill and you get great reviews on Google, that business name becomes more and more valuable. And so when we end up selling businesses later on, a part of the sales price is usually because of just the name. So we want to make sure we're actually protecting the name. We do that through trademark registration, which is done at the federal level. So the federal government, we register it. That means if you're in the United States, you have protection all throughout the entire United States. Now, on the flip side of this is copyright. So if you are making any kind of creative thing, you write books, you make music, you're a music producer, you're a filmmaker, let's say you develop tech, so you make applications, this is all stuff or software. This is all stuff that is going to be protected through copyright. You want to make sure that you actually register your copyrights. In both copyrights and trademarks, you have huge benefits of actually getting registrations, such as statutory damages, such as your attorney's fees. You can get those reimbursed, but it's a prerequisite for you actually suing in a court of law. And the longer you wait to get your copyright, for example, the more rights you actually lose, and you won't be able to get as much money through statutory damages. So please don't wait. This is so important, and it is not, terribly expensive when it comes to like the copyrights and even the trademarks. You want to make sure that you do this for yourself. Okay. So we're building the business, we're protecting the intellectual property. And then the next thing we need to think about are the actual contracts. Everything that you do as a business is going to have a contract. And if you don't have a contract, then you have a verbal agreement. And I, had someone ask, well, are verbal agreements even enforceable? The answer is yes. You can typically enforce verbal agreements, but guess what? It's super hard, right? Because you usually don't have evidence of the agreement, the relationship, and what happened. So just have a contract, make sure these are drafted. And then when you are a super pro business, you end up just having your own templates, right? So you have like a contractor agreement, you might have your employment agreements for your staff, you might have licensing agreements for kind of what you do deals with merchants and vendors. All of this stuff has to be papered, and you got to make sure the contract actually protects you. Okay, so you're going to build your contract templates, you're going to make sure you're getting your stuff reviewed by a real attorney. And then the next layer has to do with not only licensing, which kind of falls within the contract area, but this is like, for example, in the sports arena, whenever I do sports things and we're representing leagues and teams, I mean, half of what we do, again, in intellectual property is we are licensing the right to use names and logos and all the things. So that's more of a way to make money, which we'll talk about with you and your business later. Now, the next kind of category has to do with, of course, banking, taxes, and while of course I think any good attorney can kind of give you general thoughts on what works really well. For example, in regards to S corporations and C corporations, you got to get an accountant. Like honestly, when it comes to business management, having an attorney and an accountant are really the two most essential people other than you, because you're the boss. And lastly, you got to make sure that you get an attorney that is the right fit for you. Now, it's not just get an attorney. Obviously, you want to have an attorney review the contracts, help you with your deals, but you got to take the time because sometimes you need to go through a few different attorneys to find the right fit. When you find the right fit, you're going to have someone who's going to make you money because that person is going to be negotiating better deals for you, better contracts, and actually giving you sound legal advice to help you to navigate generally the marketplace of what you're doing, the business stuff, and to help you to grow. Okay, so seek legal counsel, but get someone who is a really good fit, and that just takes time. So, in conclusion, as you are pursuing any kind of business venture, these are kind of different categories and building blocks that you're going to make sure are in place. Because at the end of the day, we still haven't even talked about the kinds of services and goods that you sell, because that's a whole different thing. And sales and conversions and marketing, those are different arenas. So, what we're doing is we're building a baseline of all the legal stuff and administrative stuff that you're just going to get out of the way. So, you don't have to think about it, but that you are going to stay legally protected and you will thank yourself for it later.